should say. Good morning. So what I want to talk about follows up a little bit on the previous BBC about communicating with people. And it kind of has to do with the idea of welcoming divergent opinions about things, but at the same time, keeping the conversation polite without name calling and stereotypes and things like that. Okay? So it made me think that Nagarjuna in Precious Garland, he was really emphasizing always speaking the truth. But he defined the truth as not just saying what is beneficial, but what is kind. Yeah, and that's an important qualification. Yeah, that the motivation behind the speech must be kind. There must be a good intention that the speech is useful in order for that speech to become true. So if the speech is designed to hurt or insult, or damage or criticize, then that speech isn't true. So it's a different way of looking at the truth, which makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah. If we look at right speech in the Eightfold Noble Path, to abandon lying, creating disturbance with our speech, dividing people with it, harsh speech or insulting people, and then idle talk. So all those four are important for it to be right speech. Now the question comes, how do you put true speech, according to Nagarjuna, and right speech, according to the Buddha, together with freedom of speech, which we so highly value in this country? Okay? Because people in this country are very prickly about if they're told that their speech is not appropriate. Yeah? In many countries, people will accept that because of the culture. There's a culture of, we speak in a certain way and we don't go beyond that. But in this country, people have a very strong feeling of, I can say whatever I want to whoever I want in whatever language I want, and I don't care. And so even this morning I was watching a clip, and in Lewis County in our state, because Governor Inslee just said that starting Friday, everybody has to wear a mask when they went outside. So the sheriff of Lewis County in Washington State is together with, there must have been a group, 40, 50 people. And he said, in reaction to the governor's, mandate to wear a mask, what I have to say is, don't be a sheep. And they all applauded. And of course, none of them were wearing masks. Okay. So how does that kind of language fit in with true speech and right speech? Yeah. Or when we do a BBC talk and we talk about racism, and somebody says, well, I'm racist and I have very good reasons behind it. It's because these people do this and this and this and this and this and this. Yeah. So what do you do? How do you have free speech and true speech and right speech? And is there censorship involved? For example, if I am angry at some policy that the government made, And I let my anger out and I blast things and I insult people and I criticize them and I call them names. And, that all involves a lot of exaggeration and so on. I feel good that I've gotten that out. I feel like I've said my part and it's my right to speak like that. But is it ethical speech? Yeah, it's First Amendment speech. I'm protected by the First Amendment. Yeah. And what would happen if I censored myself and said, I'm not going to speak like that? Okay. Now, some people would say, oh, that's very good. It means you have self-discipline. You have self-restraint. You're thinking about the effects of your actions on others, and you're caring about that. And so you are refraining yourself. Yeah, you're censoring yourself. But people don't like to say they're censoring themselves because that sounds like you're repressing things, or like you really want to say it, but you're not saying it because people will disapprove of you. Yeah, but there's a difference there, isn't there? In I'm deciding not to speak something that that might sound exaggerated and hurtful and insulting to somebody else that I think is very true, and I don't mind employing a few expletives and calling people some names in order to emphasize that I disagree with what those people said. But if I think about it and decide, well, that's going to cause some turmoil, and yes, it feels good to vent my anger, but that's not really going to help with a discussion, and communication from occurring. And I decide because of that to refrain my own speech. I think that is coming from a good motivation. Yeah. And that's coming from, caring about the effect of my speech on other people, because I live in an interdependent society. And whether something is my right or not my right, what trumps my rights is what is beneficial for the community. Yeah, so what is beneficial for the community is more important than my individual rights, because as a spiritual practitioner, I've been training my mind to, expand my mind and take care of more people and realize the influence of my actions on other people. So that would be good. Somebody else who values their rights more than, the effect of their actions on others would say, why are you self-censoring? This is ridiculous. You have the right in this country to say whatever you want and call people names and swear and lie and exaggerate. You can't say fire in the middle of a crowded theater, but you can lie all you want. Yeah, and even publish it and cause other people to believe your lies, and all of that is protected by free speech. So why are you self-censoring? Yeah, you should just speak your mind. And if you think these conspiracy theories are true, well, just put them out there. People are intelligent, and if they don't believe them, they won't. But you may have something in your conspiracy theory, except it's by this time it's not a conspiracy theory. It's something that's the truth, and you need to inform other people by it. So don't self-censor. Okay. There's a number of viewpoints here. Now, what about if on our website, we give a certain kind of talk, like this kind of talk, like what I'm saying, and then somebody writes in the comment box, you nuns are nuts. Yeah? You claim you want a diversity of views, But you don't really, because look at your BBCs. You're self-censoring. You're demanding that people speak kindly and without insult and always telling the truth. And, I believe what I'm saying is the truth. And if you call it racist, that's your problem. But I'm telling the truth from my viewpoint. And they put that on in the BBC in the comment box. Okay, now, do we leave it up in the name of freedom of speech? Okay, everybody has diverse viewpoints. They put their viewpoint on, that's fine. Or do we take it down because for us, that doesn't meet the qualifications of right speech and true speech. And as a religious organization that's trying to propagate certain values in society, that goes against the value, and so we take it down. So are we taking it down with a good motivation, or are we taking it down because we don't like their ideas? Yeah, and what about their freedom of speech? Okay. But it's on our website, so don't we have the freedom to discern what comments we keep on our channel, our YouTube channel? Don't we have some freedom of speech there to say we will accept certain comments but not other comments because we don't consider that right speech? Yeah. So there's a number of interesting things to look at here. And how do we communicate our values, And I saw many people nodding their heads in agreement when I mentioned taking it down. How do we, when people use harsh speech or untrue speech or whatever, how do we communicate that to the people whose comments we've taken down? Yeah, when we don't necessarily even know them or how to reach them or whatever, and when we don't want to spend all day responding to comments, which could easily happen if a whole discussion about comments starts, yeah? Because many people have a lot of time these days to get into these discussions online. We don't have that time to do that. Okay. But it's an interesting question, don't you think? And what's it going to sound like to the rest of America if we say that for us, right speech, true speech, ethical speech is more important than freedom of speech? We have to be sure to qualify that for us. If we dare say it pertains to other people, they will explode because many people, for them, what is more important is their freedom of speech, not the effect of their speech. But I remember a couple of years ago, when we invited the sheriff to come and have lunch. Yeah, do you remember that? We should do that again, actually. It was really good and very informative because I got to ask a lot of questions that I had never been able to ask to law enforcement before. So we should do that again. But one of the things I had asked him was about open carry in Washington State, and was it legal? And he said yes. And I asked him something about, well, how do you feel about it being legal and its effect on people like me, where open carry makes me feel less safe rather than more safe? Yeah, because for the people who value the Second Amendment, open carry and weapons make them feel more safe. For me, it has the opposite effect. So he said something which I found very interesting because, he polices this area, and he sees people walking down the street, with their AR-15s and their so on and so forth. And he said that he tells some of those people, it, it may be your right to carry that, but you don't always have to display your rights. Yeah. So you have that right, but you don't always have to make use of that right and walk around, downtown Newport, which is, like one street, carrying your machine gun. And I thought that was very interesting for me to hear somebody from the sheriff say, yeah. And that gave me something to think about in terms of speech, that I may have free speech, but I decide not to use it to let myself express all my negative feelings and get it off my chest, because, I value the effect that it's going to have on other people. And that, to me, is more important than my freedom of speech. In that instance. In another instance, I may, my freedom of speech is going to be more important, but I will temper my freedom of speech with wise speech and ethical speech, okay? So choosing not to use my freedom of speech like that doesn't mean that I don't speak what is true for me, doesn't mean that I back down in the face of other people's opinions. It just means that I am very aware of the effect of my speech on others and my own motivation for speaking. And for me, that's quite important, so I monitor it. Yeah. But if we're at a meeting and about some other topic that I feel quite strongly about, I will express that, and I will express what I'm thinking quite strongly, if I think it's for the benefit of the community. So it's not a thing of caving in, and self-censoring yourself so that you don't disagree with anybody. Disagreement with people is normal. We even disagree with ourselves. So of course we're going to disagree with others. So, it's not to stifle disagreement. It's how you express your disagreement. And so here's where NVC comes in, and this is why this relates to what I spoke about 2 days ago, is thinking how to express disagreement, but in a way that is polite, in a way that somebody else can listen to it without shutting it out because I'm speaking with vulgar language or whatever. So how do I say things in a way that actually communicates? When it is so tempting sometimes to call people names and swear and put them in stereotypical boxes and say they're crazy and that's it. So how do I even refrain myself from speaking like that when sometimes I'm upset about some issue or some topic? Okay. So I think that's the end of my BBC, and I hope I left you with more questions than when we started the BBC, because even though I dreamt about this all night, I didn't solve all the questions.
So in terms of what I have observed, when I observe people exercising rights without the component of wisdom that you mentioned, usually what happens is that it's not just the effect on the other person, but it has a deleterious effect in the society as a whole, which then comes back to negatively impact the same people who are engaged in that behavior. So it is ultimately self-defeating, but they somehow don't think that expansively. They're just sort of limiting themselves to what I'm doing at this moment and the impact or the effect that I want this to have at this moment. And so if we look at where the country is right now, a lot of that is the effect of certain freedoms expressed in a deleterious way.
Yeah.